Hi, Dr. Reagan Robertson, CCO of Productive Dentist Academy here, and I have a question for you. Are you finding it hard to get your team aligned to your vision, but you know you deserve growth just like everybody else? That's why we've created the PDA Productivity Workshop. For nearly 20 years, PDA workshops have helped dentists just like you align their teams, get control of scheduling, and create productive practices that they love walking into every day. Just imagine how you will feel when you know your schedule is productive, your systems are humming, and your team is aligned to your vision. It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. We can help. Visit productivedentist.com/workshop. That's productivedentist.com/workshop to secure your seats now.
If you think about it, nobody wants dental treatment.
Right.
I mean, really, even dentists. Dentists don't want dental treatment. But here's what we all want. We all want solutions to the problems that we know that we have. So, if we don't want dentistry, then why do we spend so much time on the front end trying to gain acceptance of treatment? Why do we talk about treatment so much so early? Instead, we should be really good at presenting problems and conditions.
Welcome to Investment Grade Practices Podcast, where we believe private practice dentists deserve to get the lifestyle today while building an asset for tomorrow. Join your host, Victoria Peterson, to design the practice of your dreams and secure your financial independence. Let's get started.
Welcome, everyone. Today is a special treat. I have one of my really great industry friends, Dr. Chris Bowman, here with me today. Chris and I have known each other several decades. I would age us both, but I do believe that we first met around 1999 at the turn of the century. And it's so great to be with you today, Dr. Bowman, and catch up and see how you're influencing dentistry today. So, welcome to Investment Grade Practices.
Thanks so much, Vicki. I always love seeing you, and I'm really happy to be here and honored to be here today.
Well, we're going to jump right into it. You are a master communicator. You always have been. You studied it for decades. I think that's one of the things you and I had in common. And that's the topic I want to bring forward. How does communication help you build an investment grade practice, one that's predictable and durable? And I know you've got a master class teaching communication skills as a marketing tool, really, to help patients get to yes. So let's talk when you say communication, how do you define that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if I may, I'll define communication, then I'll also define marketing, and then hopefully tie those together.
Perfect.
Yeah, so communication is really anything that anyone does in a business that makes an impression on another person in that business. So it could be verbal, of course, and it could be nonverbal. Many of us have seen the statistics that over 90% of communication is nonverbal, when
Mm,
I would say over 90% of the training in communication is on verbal. So
mm,
there's a lot left on the table there when you fail to consider the nonverbal aspects of communication. So communication is really anything that you do in a business or personally when you interact with someone else. That's communication. Um, I like to couple that with marketing.
mhm.
And my definition of marketing is a lot more broad than most people would anticipate. It's very similar sounding to the communication definition. In my view, marketing is anything that anyone in a business does that influences a potential client, existing client, um, to do more or less business with them. So it could be anything that they do. And an example might be a waiter at a restaurant. If a waiter's having a really good day, offering really good service, that's obviously going to be good marketing because it's going to make a great impression and you're going to make a decision to do more business with that
Yeah.
business. So
I,
anything that influences someone to do more or less business with your business is marketing. So when you
it
put those
brings
two
me
things
back.
together,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, it's okay. When you put those two things together, you can actually structure your communication systems in a business to effectively be a marketing system, because you can develop communication systems that will literally influence your potential and existing patients, clients, customers
Mhm.
to hopefully do more business with you based on how you interact with them.
I love that. I love that. You're taking me back to Fred Joyle's first book, Everything is Marketing,
Everything, yeah.
right? Paint color on your wall, the sign that says welcome, everything. I love that. So how do you tie that together with patients saying yes? And in fact, what is yes?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. You know, yes, obviously, is the decision to move forward and the decision to maintain that initial commitment. If someone comes into your practice, they're making an initial commitment to at least try you out.
Hmm.
And when you can start to build that relationship as early as the first point of contact with a potential new patient, and then really nurture and develop that process throughout the new patient appointment and so on, you can build that relationship to a point where patients are going to be more likely to continue that commitment and to move forward. And that always happens with a yes.
Hmm.
So from the first point of contact, my goal in working with dental practices is to help them to establish and develop what I call the patient relationship development process. To really begin strong with a strong new patient phone call, and even do some things between the new patient phone call and the new patient appointment, assuming they've scheduled, to increase the odds they show up. And then just every step of that process, you're continuing to build the relationship, you're continuing to build the trust. And when you build the relationship and the trust, you build influence. And as long as the influence is consistent with what's in the best interest of each patient, that's of course what makes it ethical.
Mm,
And you're able to ethically influence patients to move forward with ultimately your treatment recommendations. There's a lot more involved in that. But that's ultimately, in my view, what leads to yes.
I love that. And what are the obstacles that keep patients, I mean, time and money for sure, but what are the obstacles within the practice that put up roadblocks?
Yeah, that's a really good question because most doctors and team members think about the obstacles that the patients may have. And the first three that come to mind in most cases are time, money, and fear.
Right?
There is one, by the way, that beats all three of those combined, and I'll get to that in a minute. But within the practice, I think for a lot of us, and for me, back in the older days of my practice, the biggest impediment for me to get yeses from my patients was that I wasn't doing it the right way. I wasn't communicating with my patients in a way that resonated with them. I was communicating in a way that resonated with me, a
Mm,
dentist. And I wasn't really connecting with them on a personal level. I wasn't really addressing what their goals and concerns were. And I wasn't tying my treatment recommendations back to their goals and to their concerns.
right.
And that's one of the big secrets. Once you can identify what your patient's goals are, and once you can identify what they really want, that's classic Zig Ziglar, then
Right.
you can start to tie your recommendations back to those goals and back to those wants so that it really makes sense for patients to move forward with your recommendations. So within a dental practice, if you think about the way that most dentists were trained in dental school, I mean, even today, I've heard a lot of younger dentists say, they tell us to tell patients what they need.
Right.
And and that to me is probably one of the worst ways to present dentistry to patients because it does some things that are quite frankly wrong. Number one is it assumes the value system of the patient. And when you're telling someone you need this,
Right.
if you're a dentist, you're saying you need this. What you're really saying is these are my values, and based on what my values are, I think you need this. And that a lot of times that happens before a patient is even asked what they want.
Yeah.
So who are we to determine what someone needs without asking what they want? So I think that's one of the biggest disconnects that we see. So in my training, one of the things I emphasize is that we shouldn't really begin any sentences with the words you need. Like
Mm,
you need this, you need that. Matter of fact, I say needs a four-letter word in dentistry.
Oh, that's
Um,
funny.
the only way that we could use the word need is if we use it in conjunction with something that the patient says that they want. So, in other words, if a patient says, I want to be out of pain right now, and they have an abscessed tooth, I'd say, okay, well, if you want to be out of pain right now, then what we'll need to do is this.
Yeah.
And that's the only time I might use the word need in my practice. Um, so again, that disconnect between the way we were trained in dental school and even the way some dentists are trained after dental school and the way that I believe things should be presented to patients, that seems to be the biggest impediment. And another impediment is I call it the monkey see, monkey do training technique, which
Ooh,
is you get new team members in a practice, or maybe even new doctors in a practice, and there's no formal training in communication. The training basically consists of, okay, let's say it's a front office person. Okay, watch her and do what she does. Monkey see, monkey do. You get a new assistant who's in the practice. Okay, here's the lead assistant who's been here for 15 years. Do what she does. She's going to train you. And there's no formal communication training in most practices. Same thing
yeah.
with a hygienist. I mean, I remember in dental school, I learned my initial communication skills by listening to what the upperclassmen said in dental school. And only later in my own practice, when I realized that patients can actually say no, I realized that what I learned wasn't working. And
No.
that's kind of what set me on this big quest to solve the puzzle.
And so are your systems getting patients to say yes to something or to comprehensive care? What is the pathway that they that where do these communication skills take the patient?
Yeah, so one of the things I cover in my training is what I call the spectrum of philosophy of care and also the spectrum of patient compliance. So I use this imaginary line that would go from, say, your far left to your far right. And on the far left would be a dental philosophy that a dentist might have that hopefully no dentist has, where they don't really recommend doing any dentistry. They wait till the very last minute. Um, they say everything looks fine, even though things don't look fine, and they don't really recommend any dental care. And if they do, it may not be the best dental care. And on the other end of the spectrum is the dentist who always recommends ideal dentistry every single time, no matter what, whether the patient says yes or no. One of the things I like to say is you want to give every patient the opportunity to say yes or no to your best care. And that philosophy is the philosophy that I have. And now that can't come though without the proper amount of information. So if you imagine that spectrum of presenting ideal dentistry every time to the dentist, probably a fictional dentist that would never present ideal dentistry ever. And then on top of that, if you lay another line that would be what I call the spectrum of patient compliance. Now, this will be on the far left again, would be the patient who never really goes to the dentist, never really does any dental work unless it's the very last minute and it's a desperate emergency. And then on the other end of the spectrum is the rare patient who always does everything that's recommended ideally every single time. They show up early for their appointments and they bring cookies. So I always say in every practice, there's a Betty. And in
Right.
our practice, we've had a Betty. And Betty brings cookies and she's early and she always does the recommended dental care. And what you want to do is you want to move more of your patients toward that side of the spectrum. And the way you do that is again by starting with what's important to them and what they want. And then when you're going through your diagnostic protocols and your findings, you describe the findings to the patients in a way that ties it back to their goals. So an example would be if if you tell me that you want to keep your teeth the rest of your life and you want to have optimal dental health, and I find some old, let's say some old fillings or old crowns that have decay underneath them, I would say, hey Vicky, I see some things here that aren't going in the direction that you said you wanted your health to go. Let me show you what these are. And another big point of emphasis is that if you think about it, nobody wants dental treatment.
Right.
I mean, really, even dentists. Dentists don't want dental treatment, but here's what we all want. we all want solutions to the problems that we know that we have. So if we don't want dentistry, then why do we spend so much time on the front end trying to gain acceptance of treatment? Why do we
Right.
talk about treatment so much so early? Instead, we should be really good at presenting problems and conditions
There you go.
because that's what patients want the solutions for. And once we get good at presenting problems and solutions to patients and then tying it back to their goals, like I said, then patients begin to be interested in having those problems solved. So that's when we can start to open a discussion about treatment. I believe that most training in this arena begins way too early with the discussion of treatment and the the benefits of the treatment and the value of the treatment and all that's great. But I think that that should wait a little bit until we have a really thorough discussion of the problems and conditions that we see. And I've got a whole system for doing that.
I love it. And that was going to be my final question is how do you make this durable? It all sounds great. I go to a class, I do it for a month or two, and then I get a new employee and they don't do it, and we didn't send them to the training and it starts to fade again. So how do you make communication a system that's durable?
Yeah, that's another great question, and I got a couple different answers for that one. The first way to do it is to start with the most important elements first and then build on it. So when we do the training, we start with the beginning. It goes in chronological order. For example, what we would all call the new patient phone call, that I call the potential new patient phone call, because they're not a new patient yet. Following that up with the steps to get them into the office once they've scheduled. And then what I call the new patient connection interview. To me, that's the most important thing that's done in the practice with a new patient. It's one of the very first things that a team member does with a patient is identifying again what's important to that person, what are they looking for, what are their goals for their health, for their smile, what do they see as potential obstacles, and what's important to them, what do they want. Once we have that information, that's gold.
Yeah.
And then we can use that information when we do our findings and again, tie that back, like I said earlier. So, as far as how this is maintained and sustained in a dental practice, using that new buzzword, sustainability. Um, the
Is that a
way,
buzzword?
yeah, I think it is nowadays. How do you make this sustainable in your practice? Um, you begin to lay these layers in with team meetings. You say, okay, we're going to get this new patient phone call down. We're going to get the new patient interview down. And now we're going to start layering in new elements. And your question about new team members, what if you have a team member that moves away and you have to hire someone new? Well, one really cool thing that is developing right now, within the next few weeks, I'll be launching the Getting Yes Masterclass online, which
Nice.
is a complete video recording of an entire live course. So that's going to be launched very soon. And doctors that participate in the live training will be able to get access to the online video training. And of course, doctors that want to access the video online training can do that as well. So there'll be different options for doctors depending on the level of involvement that they want. But that's my main goal is to make it something that's a continuous journey as opposed to just a 2-day course.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things I say a lot with we've got a 50-page manual that comes with the course, and one of the things I say to the doctors is don't put it where all the other ones are. You want to put it in a place where you're going to reach for it on a routine basis.
There you go. I love it. Well, Chris, you have always been an advocate of patient care, of opening up access. And I think you're hitting on a really important topic that doctors are really overwhelmed with patients right now. And many are looking to get out of the what they term the PPO trap. But even with good communication skills, patients understand that as a beneficiary thing to help them with part of their treatment, maybe not all their treatment. It all comes back to the communication skills. So, thank you for tackling this really, really important problem for making this something that can become a durable system in your practice. I think predictability is one of the things that lowers a practitioner's stress more than anything. So, it's good for the patient and it's good for the practice. We'll be sure to put your cell phone number and your email address into the show notes so people can contact you along with the website gettingpatientstoyes.com so that they can reach out and find out more. Is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
I would like to say that the process of moving patients through your practice, and again, that patient relationship development process, it doesn't have to be stressful and it doesn't have to be confusing, and it can be systematized. And a lot of people don't think about communications as something that you can make into a system.
Mhm.
And when it ends up creating the results that you want in your practice, it literally becomes a marketing system. So that's my goal for each practice that participates. And um, that's something that I believe we're accomplishing today.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We look forward to great things to come from you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Investment Grade Practices Podcast. If you find value in this episode, help us spread the word by passing it along to a dental friend, subscribe, and give us a like on iTunes or Spotify. Learn more about building your investment grade practice at productivedentist.com today.